Hello everybody, welcome back to the World AI Free-For-All. This is AlzaboHD, and this is part 10 of the World AI Free-For-All series. Of course, in the last episode, for a quick recap, the Soviet Union has successfully defended its borders against Persia, who has been quite the aggressor and trying to push up north into Central Asia and Western Europe. Of course, the main points of contention here are the Soviet capital, or rather the Armenian Soviet capital of Yerevan. Of course, this is where the Soviet Armenian Republic was. This has been a hotly contested area between Persia and the Soviet Union. It has switched hands, I believe, 3 times as of this recording. Of course, you guys can see there are still several Persian military units within the border of the Soviet Union down here, and of course also the city of Krasnodar in Central Asia on the southern border of the Soviet Union and the Persian Empire. And this is also a hotly contested area that has also switched hands, I believe, twice as of this writing. Persia, of course, took it in the last episode, but the Soviet Union was able to retake it, and they've been rebuilding ever since. Of course, we still have some Persian military units right outside the border of the Soviet Union, but they will be probably pushed back. We have this gigantic mountain range over here spanning through Central Asia, I believe modern-day Kazakhstan, which will hopefully keep the fighting down to a minimum between the Persian Empire and the Soviet Union. Perhaps the Soviet Union will even be able to push back the Persian Empire into its own territory and take some cities. Of course, over here in the west, the Soviet Union was able to take 2 French cities last episode, the former German cities of Berlin and Hamburg, which are now firmly under the grasp of the Soviet Union. They've, of course, installed satellite states over here, just like they have in real life after World War II. We have East Germany, or rather all of Germany, underneath Soviet hegemony, and we also have the city of Kaliningrad, and then the surrounding area of Poland as well, all underneath Stalin's grasp. England still at peace with the rest of the main factions, I guess, the main power blocks. Of course, in the future, who knows how safe the cities of Ribe and Copenhagen will be from Stalin, but I digress. Of course, France has been taken down quite a few notches here, as they've been pushed back into historically French territory, of course, with the addition of Iberia, including Spain and Portugal, and of course Italy, with Lyon and the modern-day city of, I believe this is like Venice over here. I know that Italy looks really janky in this map. Let's go now over to the other fronts of, or rather the other theaters of warfare in this episode. Of course, off the coast of South America, we have a massive invasion force that's starting to fill up on the part of the Persians. They do have access to nuclear weapons, and this is a really bad thing for the Venezuelans. Of course, if you look here, there is the atomic bomb right there. Venezuela, of course, only having access to Great War planes, Great War bombers, and triplanes, so their air force is a bit outdated. And Persia still heading in with more atomic bombs, probably more from the coast. We have a massive fleet, as you guys can see, coming from the Indian Seas and the Persian theater off of the coast, of course, of the Red Sea and Persian Gulf. Going up here to the northwest of North America and the very east of Asia in modern-day Siberia, modern-day Russian Federation, we have a fight to the death between Japan and Korea. Of course, Japan is being bombarded by Persian battleships and Swahili privateers and ironclads, all while also being under attack from Korean Marines. It's of my personal beliefs or convictions that Korea will easily swarm Japan and take control of these cities, wiping Japan off of the map. Of course, in the last episode as well, Japan lost their capital city to Satsuma by the African invading force of the Kilwa Sultanate. That's a tongue twister. So anyways, America's still fighting for its independence in a very good spot. Philadelphia, of course, in modern-day Fairbanks. They have a lot of different geological features here to help defend them. Of course, they're not actually on the ocean, and they're far enough away from battleships that they cannot get bombarded. They're in a very good position, and maybe they might even decide to strike back at some point. Of course, Germany is still at war with Persia, although Persia has seemed to have given up on taking Germany as they have bigger fishes to fry, so to speak. Germany, of course, just reduced to a one city-state, basically, and maybe they will send out more settlers later on, but they're in a pretty good position. Of course, Denmark is still in the game, but they basically, for all intents and purposes, are not in the game. They only have access to one crossbowman, 2 sources of iron, and a worker that cannot improve any of these tiles, so they're basically out of the game. Yeah, I feel like I'm an auctioneer. I'm just spitting out this commentary so fast. I'll slow down a little bit. I know a few of you guys are not native English speakers, so it might help you guys if I'm a little bit slower. Of course, what we'll do is I will be going between the main battle theaters of South America and Eurasia, so we can watch the Persian advance into South America and the Persian and Soviet conflict over here in the Middle East and Central Asia. Let's go now to Western Europe. Excuse me. A little bit sick. In Western Europe and the Middle East, where we will end our turn and see how the Soviet Union and Persia kind of react to each other's presence. Of course, we will also be watching France, who is holding on for dear life here. Persia and Korea now, of course, friends. Yerevan has been captured by Persia once again. One city that I would not want to live in is, of course, Yerevan. No offense to, of course, my Armenian viewers. Yerevan is, of course, in the modern-day state of Armenia. So no offense to them, but I do think that that'll be taken back by the Soviets this turn. This thing is flopping backwards, back and forth faster than many politicians' personal convictions. We're going to go now over to Central Asia to see the damage that has been done this turn. Of course, the Soviet Union still is holding back the Persians at bay very tenaciously here. We do, of course, have some Persian helicopter gunships heading in from the south, heading towards Siberia. But the Soviet Union, now that they're at war on multiple fronts, is starting to pump out more infantry and military units. Of course, they have a very large contingent of military operations over here near Kopang, which used to be a Danish city on the Black Sea. No idea why. I think it's because Ragusa is allied with the Kilwa Sultanate, who they were actually at war with formerly. No longer, but they were formerly. Quebec has declared war on Stalin, which more than likely means that he is an ally of France. Interesting. Quebec is an ally of France. Well, of course, they are both French-speaking regions of this world, so I guess that makes sense from a linguistic perspective. Let's go over here to South America, where, surprisingly, no atomic bombs have been dropped yet, and very foolishly, the Persian forces that have the atomic bombs are just standing outside the capital city of Caracas for no reason, at least that I can see. Of course, Venezuelan privateers and frigates are on the offensive, trying to take out these Persian destroyers and carriers off of the coast of Western Africa, outside of French Africa. We got an atomic bomb outside of the French city of Oran, or Horan. I don't actually know how to spell that. That's actually a city in modern-day Algeria, so the pronunciation is quite a bit different, I think, nowadays, at least in Arabic. We're going now here to Western Europe, where France has been able to, so far, be able to keep successfully keeping out the Soviet menace. Of course, Soviet Union, the Red Army, is now outside of Paris proper, in modern-day French Flanders, this region of France, or this actually might be Belgium. You know what? This is probably Belgium. These two tiles. I mean, this one tile here is Belgium. This one tile here is Netherlands. They're unfortunately in this map they're so tiny, but very close to the modern-day French border with Lille, the city of Lille, which is in French Flanders. We're gonna go over here to the east, where we will be watching the carnage unfold. Of course, before I end the turn, let's take a look over at Japan, which is being bombarded pretty heavily. Of course, the Japanese samurai that was outside of Satsuma has been dispatched, as will the Japanese crossbowmen this turn. We have a lot of Korean ironclads outside the coast of Philadelphia and Satsuma. We will see exactly how this turns out, but I do have a feeling that Korea will take control of Nagoya here in the next few turns. Let's go now over to Western Europe and the Middle East, where we will be watching very carefully the developments between Persia and the Soviet Union. And not just Persia as well. Of course, we'll be watching out for France, We'll see exactly what they do here this turn. Of course, Persia might be able to hold on to Yerevan this turn if they are able to pump more military units into this region. Of course, the city-state of Sudan, or the former city-state of Sudan, seen over here, has access to a lot of different military units that they could probably funnel into Armenia to defend it from the Soviet Union. Of course, the Soviet Union was unable to take the city back this turn, but I am of the belief that if Persia is unable to dispatch the Stalinist IS-2 tank from Armenia, it will be recaptured. Of course, the IS-2 tank, on the last episode I mentioned it might stand for Stalin. Well, it does. The I stands for Iosif, and the S stands for Stalin. It is the Iosif Stalin 2 tank, so it is actually named after the premier of the Soviet Union himself, so pretty cool. Let's go over to Asia, where Korean Marines are right outside the city of Nagoya. Nagoya will fall next turn. That is not a question of if, it is a question of when. Let's go now over to South America, where I've been neglecting to show this Persian invasion. The Persian invasion is not doing too well. The Venezuelans are very easily defending their own territory. Of course, they have to defend against the Shoshone menace as well. And the Shoshone are starting to funnel men through Panama, perhaps about ready to strike the Venezuelan city of Pitar. Miraculously, the Venezuelans are about to destroy the one aircraft that has an atomic bomb. Very interesting, because you would think that Persia would defend their atomic bomb, or their atomic fleet, a little bit easier, but they have not. Of course, we have 2 more atomic bombs over here off of the coast of Western Africa. It remains to be seen whether or not they're heading north to strike at Scandinavia, that is Soviet Scandinavia, I should say, or into the Mediterranean to strike at perhaps Kaupang. So yeah, the Venezuelans are definitely doing really well on defense here. Of course, no nuclear bombs have gone off as of yet, knocking, of course, on figurative wood here once again. For if this aircraft is destroyed with a nuclear bomb on board, I think realistically it would explode and depopulate all of Northern and South America, but this is a video game, and physics does not apply to video games, surprisingly, especially Civilization. Let's go now back to Western Europe and the Middle East, where we will see exactly how far the Soviet Union penetrates into France, and if they are able to recover their former Armenian city of Yerevan. Of course, if the Soviet Union knew that Kim Kardashian was going to be born in Yerevan here, they probably would let the Persians hold on to it, but that is something that they would not figure out for a few years now, considering it's 1995. She's still a wee baby. I don't even know why I'm talking about her. Nobody gives a fuck about the Kardashians, especially me. So why am I even talking about her? That's a good question. Yerevan still firmly in the control of Persia. I'm starting to think now that Persia will be able to hold on to Yerevan and keep it from the Soviet Union. Of course, if the Soviet Union would have used their Iosif Stalin tanks to take over Armenia, they could have done so quite effectively. The technological gap between the Persian Empire and the Soviet Union is actually pretty large, and I haven't mentioned this in previous episodes, or perhaps I have, but Persia has access to a very militarized and modern army and air force, including helicopter gunships. That is something that Soviet Union has not yet developed, although they do have anti-aircraft guns, which should hopefully close the gap. Of course, the Soviet Union is still sending out men into Paris on the Western Front. Not a very good idea. And France, for its part, is trying to take back the former French-German city of Berlin. We'll see if they're successful in this regard. Of course, still a very large military buildup outside of Kaupang for no apparent reason. Let's go over to Central Asia, where, excuse me, all Persian units have withdrawn past the border between the Soviet Union and Persia. It's my belief that Persia will not be able to penetrate into Siberia, at least in this particular episode. Of course, outside of Japanese Nagoya, Korea is starting to rev up their offensive here, ready to take over the city, as well as the city of Nara, with all those bowing deer that I talked about in my previous episode. If you go to Nara, the local deer there are kind of, they're not worshipped, but they are celebrated as, I guess, some type of some type of deity, I guess. If anybody who's a Shinto or a Japanese viewer, you guys can correct me, but the Naris, or not the Naris, but the deer in Nara actually will bow to you if you bow to them. And I know I've mentioned this in a previous episode. This is mainly for people who are new to the series. It's very interesting, you know, seeing these videos of deer bowing to people. Like, it's kind of surreal. You can check it out on YouTube. Once again, going over here to Asia and Western Europe, where we will see how far Persia and the Soviet Union are willing to go into this conflict. Startling news is that the Persian army is outside of Kiev. Very, very bad news for the Russians, as Kiev is just a few kilometers away from Moscow. Very, very bad news for them. Of course, the Persian tank is no match for the Iosif Stalin IS-2 tank. We will see, of course, if the Soviet Union is able to defend their territory and beat back the Persians past Armenia. Of course, the Soviet Union now has a few units inside Persian Armenia. We'll see if they are able to take back their former sphere of influence. Going over here to Berlin, we have some French cavalry mucking about in East Germany, or rather the satellite state of the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, aka Soviet-occupied Germany. Let's go over here to Asia, where Nagoya has just fallen to Korea. Korea, of course, expanding its empire very slowly, especially compared to other world powers in this time period. They seem to have stopped growing organically, and they are just focusing on growing militaristically through the annexation of other civilizations. Of course, Japan is now reduced to one city, as is America, and of course, the fan favorite Denmark over here in Exile Island. We're going over here to South America, where we will see if any bombs have dropped. Of course, the atomic bomb has been neutralized. The Venezuelans were able to destroy the carrier, the aircraft carrier that held on to this atomic bomb. Venezuela is safe for now, which is a good thing for the Venezuelans. No atomic bombs have been dropped. Very, very good for Venezuela. We do, however, have some atomic bombs heading north, perhaps into the Mediterranean, perhaps into the North Sea. We have 3 atomic bombs, actually. Let's see if we have any more here. Very, very scary for the Soviet Union, as the Persians might not hold back in this episode from using the nuclear weapons. So far, besides that, nothing really to report from Africa. We do, of course, have some Kilwanese naval units being recruited over here, as do we have a massive railroad connecting Persia and the Kilwanese Sultanate. I don't really know why. Maybe they're allies. Maybe they're just allowing Persia an easier time to march into their lands and annex the former French city of Bordeaux and these cities down here. It's a bit interesting. Perhaps they have a bit of a friendship, perhaps not. Going over here to Central Asia, of course, nothing much has changed. We do have a massive army, actually, in modern-day China and Southeast Asia, near Vietnam. And they're marching through Korean land. We'll see where they go. It's my belief that they are trying to help out their ally in taking out Japan, and then after they realize that Japan is already defeated, they will march northwest near Kobchev and Tbilisi. Of course, Tbilisi is, of course, a German city. Excuse me. A Georgian city. Woo! My sickness here is affecting my ability to commentate effectively. Let's go over here once again to Western Europe and the Middle East, where we will be watching with anxious eyes to see if Persia is able to push into the Soviet Union, or rather if the Soviet Union is able to push south into Persia. France and Kilwa are now friends, quite surprisingly. Surprisingly, because they were at war not too long ago when they had those colonies that were snatched from them. Washington and Japan are at peace. North and South America are at peace. Very, very good news for everybody involved. Stalin, of course, making peace with French Canada. And the Soviet Union was able to successfully repel the Persian invaders outside of Kiev. along the River Volga. I believe this is the River Volga anyways. So let's go now to Western Europe, where nothing really is happening. Let's go instead over to Persian Armenia. We've got, of course, some Iosif Stalin tanks heading south into Armenia. I believe they will be able to capture it next turn. Of course, Central Asia is much the same as it was last turn. Nagoya in the hands of the Koreans. And I believe Korea will be able to take Nara here in the next, I'd say, 4 or 5 turns. Of course, now that the Shoshone are at peace with Venezuela, we have a era of peace and prosperity between both of these continents. Persia, nowhere to be seen. It seems like the Venezuelans were able to successfully and forcefully dissuade the Persians from landing an invasion force in South America. Going now, we have a massive naval force, naval contingent that's heading into the Mediterranean through, I believe, French waters into the Mediterranean Sea. No atomic bombs have been detonated as of yet, which is a very good thing, because as soon as atomic bombs are dropped in game, the person who drops the bombs suffers a massive diplomatic penalty. In fact, the entire world views them as a blatant warmonger, and it'll be harder for them to acquire allies in the future and deal diplomatically with other civilizations. So if Persia is indeed to drop an atomic bomb on the Soviet Union, they are basically forfeiting any alliances that they could gain in the future, potentially, which means that they will be an international pariah, much like modern-day Iran is to this day, particularly in the West, although that is changing with rapidly progressing deals in terms of energy and all sorts of things like that. Of course, Armenia has been recaptured by the Soviet Union. A Iosif Stalin battalion, Iosif II Stalin battalion was able to take back the city of Yerevan. Yerevan in perpetual resistance as they are unable to really acclimate themselves to the invaders that keep coming from the north and the south, respectively. Of course, independence for Armenia is, at this point, all but a pipe dream for the Armenians that live there. We do have some atomic bombs in the Mediterranean Sea now, which is a bit scary. It seems to me that France has not given Persia military access through Algiers, which is a bad thing for Persia, at least, as Persia now seems like they are about ready to head south and southeast past the Cape again to go home. They, I guess they decided that since they can't get military access through France, they just better pack up and go home. We, of course, are going to be focusing up here on Nara, which will be captured next turn, I believe, by the Koreans. Very sad day. Of course, all the deer here will probably be captured and sentenced to death camps by the Koreans. So let's go over again to Central Asia, where the Soviet Siberian cities are being rebuilt after the bloody struggle of the last episode. We do actually have an English archaeologist up here in northern Siberia, probably freezing his ass off. We'll see. We do actually also have oil up here. Very interestingly enough, we do have a Stalinist scout checking out that oil. Very cool. Germany's still independent, which is nice for them. They certainly lucked out more than, let's say, the Japanese, who are being repeatedly gangbanged by military forces. We're going now over to Western Europe and the Middle East once again to kind of see if Persia and the Soviet Union are ready to sign peace with each other. Perhaps they are, perhaps they're not. Of course, the amazing, unique ability, the Iron Curtain that Stalin possesses, is definitely hindering Persian ambitions into Eurasia. Yerevan, again, suffering massive loss of life as it's been basically reduced to rubble. We will see if the Soviet Union is able to bring more men into this contested region. They are moving some tanks, it seems, down into the southeast, into Armenia. Of course, Berlin is now almost fully recovered in health, which is a good thing for them. And France is slowly but surely building up a military force. It doesn't seem like they have very much in the way of military units, but they might have enough to deter the Soviet Union from attacking them. All of those all of those carriers with the atomic bombs that were trying to get into the Mediterranean Sea have actually turned around. They've done an about-face and heading back home. I have no idea why. We do, of course, have some Stalinist missionaries heading into Venezuela. Perhaps communist atheism will find its way into the hearts of South America. Going to the north, once again, Nara, very stalwartly defending its territory. Of course, this is the last holdout area of Japan. Excuse me. We will see if they are able to defend themselves. I don't think they can. We do, of course, have a Japanese great musician trying to run west into Siberia. Perhaps Germany will give sanctuary to Johann Brahms, who I believe was either a German, Austrian, or Swiss individual. It definitely sounds like a Germanic name. So I always thought of Japan as being kind of like the Germany of Asia. You know, they were very militarized, I guess, before World War II or during World War II. The language, it seems to me, at least for somebody who doesn't speak German or Japanese, they both sound very harsh and intense. So, I mean, don't take my linguistic observations here as fact. They certainly are not. It just seems to me that Japan is a very industrialized state, just like Germany is to this day. That's why I'm drawing parallels here. Yerevan was recaptured by the Persians. It seems like this is a city that will flip-flop back and forth between both spheres of influence, with no clear winner, it seems. And I'm really pissed off at Stalin for continuously plopping down his tanks into the Black Sea. They would be much better off over here on the roads outside of Yerevan. And look at this. There's a Vietnamese worker in the Soviet Union. This might actually be the last Vietnamese unit in the entire game. This is crazy. I mean, we got a unit from a civilization that died off 1,000 years ago in Russia, basically. This is very interesting news. Of course, all observations are pointing to Russia sending military units into Western Europe. We'll see, of course, if they succeed in capturing Paris here in the next episode. We do have one atomic bomb in the Mediterranean, as we have previously. Going over here to Nara once again, where very stalwartly the Japanese are still holding out with their very antiquated technology. Of course, they're using a galleass against the ironclad forces of Korea. Let's go to South America again, where Persia has given up their South American ambitions, at least for the time being. The Shoshone are still redeveloping their land. It seems to me to be kind of weird that they would pop out so many battleships up here north of San Francisco and Powaki, where this entire region of course, modern-day Canada, they can't escape. There are ice flows that prevent them from ever taking these men into the Atlantic or the Pacific. So I have no idea why they would ever do that. Of course, I believe this is the Hudson Bay, or sorry, no, it's the Rupert's Bay. I don't even remember. I played a lot of Empire Total War. This place is known as Rupert's Land. Of course, that's completely antiquated. But this is, of course, modern-day Nunavut, Canada, and going to the south, this is like Newfoundland and Labrador, and we got like Northern Ontario over here. So thank you guys for watching. I think, actually, for the benefit of all of you guys, I know you guys are interested in this series, as am I. We will do one more turn before I wrap things up. So let's see if the Soviet Union is able to retake Yerevan in this particular turn. I don't think they can. I mean, Yerevan is already past half health, and it has a massive defense of 97, which is crazy. Of course, Persia is now outside of the Soviet city of Kiev. The Soviet Union is definitely vulnerable here to Persian attack. We will see how able they are to dispatch these Persian units from their territory. They weren't, actually, this episode. Very, very bad news for the Soviet Union. They really need to go to peace with France and then dedicate all of their men to the east and not in Lyon. That's a bit silly. Right, so this is the end of episode 10. We're going to go now at kind of an overview of the world. Of course, this will be an interesting way to start episode 11 with 3 helicopter gunships right outside of Kiev, and by proxy, very close to the Soviet capital of Moscow. Let's go to the east in Siberia, where Soviet Siberia is still safe for the time being. Of course, we have some developments over here in Central Asia. Persia is kind of making a little bit of an air force outside of Frankfurt. We're going to go east now, where Japan has been destroyed from the game. They are no longer a member of the civilizations that are currently here. Of course, they do still have some units, and they do also have a great musician. But if they're unable to take back their city, they will be relegated to the same status as Vietnam, which has one worker over here in the Black Sea. Like I said, before we end all of our games, we'll be going over the demographics. Korea, this episode, has gained 2 cities. Very, very nice. Persia has gained 1 city, of course. And everybody else, very much the status quo. Of course, the Shoshone have declared peace with Venezuela. So North and South America are at peace for now. Perhaps in the future, Panama City will be the next city to fall, and that will unite a land bridge between South and North America. Let's go now over to South Africa, or rather Africa itself, to see what the Kilwanese Sultan is doing here. Not much in the way of expansion. They haven't really made any cities. So let's now go over to the score screen, where, surprise, surprise, Persia is at the top of the list once again. Second is, of course, still Joseph Stalin with 1,281 points. Number 3 now goes to Shoshone, who has, I believe, dethroned Kilwa for 4th place. And there are only 4 civs with over 1,000 points. Of course, very, very close to 1,000 points is Korea, a rising power, if you will, who has control over all of Eastern Asia, at least the coastline. We will go now to the demographics screen, where, surprise, surprise, Persia is in the lead, as they always are. In some aspects, they actually have very close to 5 to 6 times the amount of other civilizations. Of course, they have a very startling 70 million people, or almost 70 million people, compared to the world average of 15 million. Very scary. And they have a higher literacy rate than I do. As last episode, I had a higher literacy rate with my 1 nuclear submarine, who is still hiding from Persian frigates and other menaces. And on the topic of that, I'm actually going to make a little bit of a mountain range that will protect our trusty submarine here. Of course, you won't see it until after I save and reload this game, considering IGE does not change the terrain visually until you reload. But you guys can see on the tooltips here, these are mountains now, so he is safe. We will go once again to the cultural victory screen, where we can take a look at ideologies and happiness. Soviet Union still very firmly in autocracy. They are able to somehow hold on to autocracy, even though they have dissidents and a negative 23 modifier to their happiness. However, England and Venezuela are not nearly as lucky. They face a civil resistance and a revolutionary wave, respectively. In terms of happiness, Persia is still definitely in the lead with 104 happiness. Like I said, I have no idea how they do that. I mean, you guys can see how big of an empire they have. It's absolutely huge and sprawling. And before we wrap up, I want to thank you guys again for watching and kind of soak in this view of New Zealand, which is no longer 2 different islands. And apparently, New Zealand only has cattle, oil, and uranium. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.